This is episode 1 of 3 episodes. The first episode is installing this 12 volt 200 amp hour gel cell battery from Renogy. Now this battery here, I could have bought two 100 amp gel cell batteries and ran them in parallel, but I prefer to have one battery and reduce the number of connections. Now that battery weighs 126 pounds. Then over here to the left, that comes with the battery. It's bolts and covering for the terminals. Right here are two battery connectors. In the back here we have a two-way switch. I plan on keeping the original 100 amp hour battery and also use the 200 amp hour battery, so it allows me to switch between them. Now below that is a junction box that I have to use for the positive side. And then over here we have some vents. I have a 3-inch and 2-inch. I haven't decided which one I'm going to use yet. And then below over here are number 4 conductors, cables, to connect the new battery in and connect the switch to the existing battery. And then over to the right here we have some protector so that I can protect these cables over here to the left. So move back and you can see the whole arrangement. Not many parts, and in keeping with my general philosophy is I do not want to disrupt the existing wiring and include this as an addition to it. Now episode 2 is going to be the addition of a 12 volt to 110 volt AC inverter to this gel cell battery. And then also we're also going to that'll be episode 2, and then episode 3 is going to be wiring of the Little Guy Max to the inverter throughout the Little Guy Max. So we'll start with the install, and I'll point out where the different cables goes and the different sizes. Now all these parts will be included in the description. All of them are from Amazon, with the exception of the Renogy 12 volt 200 amp gel cell battery. Okay, the first step is to disconnect the battery from the Little Guy Max circuitry. This is the battery compartment out front, and down over here is your battery disconnect. So you turn it, see that line there, you're going to be straight up, and that will disconnect the battery from the inside of the Little Guy Max. Okay, here we have the underneath the dining room table compartment. We're going to be putting the additional battery, the 200 ampere hour battery, and the next step will be here to drill 2 3/4 inch holes. A hole to the right of that existing wire is just to the left of the steel beam that runs the entire length of the Little Guy Max. And the one on the left, there's nothing underneath it. When you drill these holes, make sure there's nothing underneath what you're going to run into. Okay, here we have the connector for each battery so that you can connect one battery to the other. And I've got the bottom plate off of it right now, and this is the underneath of the disconnect, or the selector switch if you want to call it that. We plan on mounting this to the top over here of the existing battery enclosure, and we'll button that down at the very end. We want to run all the wires, connect them up, and then we'll button it down on top of that enclosure. Here we have the connectors for the new battery. They're 4 AWG size cables, and they're 5 feet long. And we'll run one for the positive and negative from underneath the seat in the dining room table, where the new battery is going to go, to the selector switch. Okay, the next step I took was to run the 5-foot cables from inside the Little Guy Max to the battery compartment here. And you can see the ends over here. Now you gotta remember, red's positive, black is negative. And I also disconnected the battery over here, the negative side, right there. and the positive side off the terminals. One thing you want to remember is disconnect the negative side first, because that's connected all to the chassis and stuff. All this stuff here is all connected together as one common ground. And so if you disconnect the red one and you happen to touch any of the metal parts on the little guy Max, you're going to get a zap. So you don't want to do that. So anyways, disconnect the negative, and then over here the positive ones. Okay, here what we have is the two wires that were on the positive red terminal. I connected to this little guy here that I showed you in the parts section, and also this 18-inch cable here. Now that's going to turn out to be the common on the disconnect switch we're using for the battery selector. And then each terminal of each battery will go to its own terminal on the disconnect. Okay, I have everything connected up except the negative side of the battery. So there's the disconnect switch. Make sure you keep it in the off position while you're doing all this. Okay, so this one here, black wire, is for this battery right here. So I used the black wire from the other set, from this red wire here. So that one there comes all the way down, comes back around, hooks up to the hot side of the battery. So this will be battery number 2. And on the disconnect switch, battery number 1 is this red wire we ran all the way inside over there. And then over here is the common. So underneath you had the common, and then you got the 1, or actually 1 and 2 battery. So now, and here's your connector that we put together. It was the original 2 wires off of here, connected on here. This red wire here goes to the common on the disconnect switch. The black one over here, rather than getting another set of cables, so I just have red. And this connects, I used the black wire that was left over from that set, connected it to the battery here. And then over here, that's the other battery that's going to go inside, over here, and through the wall in there, into the compartment inside. So now that I got it all connected up, then I can button everything down and make it so it's pretty and stays away from other, like these hot wires here. We're not going to want this. Look at this. You don't want that near there, just in case it will get abrasive or whatever. And I'm also going to put a protector over that too. So here you go. And we're going to button it down. Now, again, here's the negative wire for the battery. And then the black one that we ran in will also connect over here. Those are the last thing to get connected after you button everything down. So you disconnect the negative side of the battery when you start. You do that first. And then when you're all through with the installation, the negative is the last thing that goes on. To move the battery into the little guy Max, there's the battery. And here you see a ramp. That's our dog ramp. So I had the ramp, slid it into the Jeep, back the Jeep up, put the ramp into the little guy. Here's the battery. And then I'll move it into the cabinet underneath the dining room seat. And I'll just open the door and slide it in. And over here is this bar here. I cut that out. I'm going to put that back in once I do the battery box. Well, here's the battery all wired up. I've got the top off so you can see inside. Over here is the connector I showed you that was the wires off the existing hot wire. Instead of using the junction box, there's enough room to slide it in next to the battery box. These, this red and black, and the smaller one over here are the connections for my solar charge controller. So those just clamp on. There was a previous episode on that. So I've buttoned everything down. The only thing I put a protector on was right here, this hot lead here. And as you can see, it's touching against the propane tank, etc. That's for the battery underneath the seat inside. So now let me slip the top over here. And you can see how this all fits. So we got the disconnect switch here. This one here is the battery inside. This one here is the current battery. And this is the common. It used to be on the hot side of the existing battery. So it's a nice little package. It's easy to get to the connector here. I have this in the off position. This position over here is battery 1 inside, battery 2, current battery. And the disconnect over here, you can just leave that on now, because this disconnect here turns it off. So we'll go inside, show you the battery installed. It turns out that I'm going to have episode 1A for this and episode 1B for the battery box itself. So the episode is not that long, and I want to take a look at the battery box. I got a couple different ideas what I want to do. One little correction. These cables here, I told you were 18 inches. They're 3 feet long. And in the description below is the link to those cables. Here we have the battery in its final place. It's all connected. Ended up charging the battery with the existing Little Guy Max power station. Brought it up to 13.5 volts, so there's no problem there. The battery box is going to be episode 1B. I'm still thinking through on how I want to do the battery box. So this is a wrap on this episode of the battery and the wiring for the battery and the disconnect, which allows me to use the existing battery in the front underneath the canister there. And then it also allows me to use this battery so I can select between the two. And also the disconnect allows me to turn both batteries off. So this is a wrap on this video. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. And have a nice day.